Hey everybody, this is Carl Smith. This is something I usually don't do for the podcast. I'm going to try to tape an intro. I'm like with everything I do, I'm learning as I go. So, and I haven't recorded the podcast with Bill Kolb yet, but I wanted to do a quick intro. He's a pretty amazing painter. I think he's in his 60s. But yeah, he's really good at making these giant, large-scale, abstract paintings. In a weird way, kind of influenced by Jackson Pollock, which is pretty interesting and really difficult to do without throwing and dripping paint. But he's been a patron of mine for a while too, which is really awesome. To have another painter interested in my work and to actually buy work from me is really encouraging. And he's been incredibly encouraging, and as far as being in Austin goes, we're really lucky to have him here. He's a great painter. And hopefully, you know, he'll be doing shows in the future. One of the things I want to talk to him about is how we don't really show enough, I don't think. It's just my opinion anyway. But yeah, it's March 2015. It's the end of South by Southwest, which is always a nightmare for me. There's always a lot of traffic problems. Yeah, this will be the third podcast. The first one was with David Lamplugh, and the second one was with Rick Reed. They're both pretty raw. I'm going to try to learn how to use GarageBand. I'm going to try to learn how to edit some of these if someone, you know, wants them edited. But yeah, I've got some other plans, some other painters, some other gallerists coming in soon, so stay tuned, and thanks for listening. Let's check out what's next with Bill Kolb, abstract painter, Austin, Texas, 2015. So who's Aaron Burr?
So Aaron Burr was somewhat of a hero in the, I believe, the Revolutionary Army, although it's been a while since I read the book. But then later on, he got kind of a bad reputation. He ended up in a duel with Alexander Hamilton and shot him dead, and a lot of people didn't think he should have done that.
Was he a business guy? I don't know.
No, he wasn't a business guy. He was. He always had big plans. He was always up to something. And one of the things he did was he built his own little army, and he didn't like the way the United States was being run after he helped form it. Yeah. And so he decided he was going to go. Are we? Yeah. He decided that he was going to go conquer Mexico. Oh. But he had a lot of enemies too, because he had kind of a bad reputation. I mean, in the United States, he had a bunch of enemies, and when they found out that he had sort of formed this own little paramilitary group, they tried to convince the government that he was a traitor and that he was planning on conquering the U.S. And so
who's they?
I think you'll have to read the book. I can't remember. I would tell you if I could remember, but...
And Gore Vidal wrote a bunch of art. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's all. That's all.
Yeah, like art criticism and stuff, right? A bunch of art books?
Maybe. I'm not widely read.
Me either.
I forget why I picked this book up. I think someone told me it was good, and so I started reading it. But I just love it, because when he was running around on the East Coast, Aaron Burr, as a young man, Manhattan was a collection of little villages, such as Greenwich Village, with farms in between them. Right. And then later on, when he gets older in the book, he's sort of reminiscing, and he's saying, now you can't look more than a mile before you see a building. Yeah, he's all upset that Manhattan has all these buildings.
Wow. Yeah, that's way out of... I'm more of like a 50s, World War II, and even then it's sketchy. But yeah, my wife was just... I guess my wife... Did she say she read it, or I can't
She said she met Gore Vidal.
Oh, fuck. I don't know that.
Yeah, now you do.
Yeah. He died, right?
As far as I know. Yeah.
Well, it's March 2015. I'm going to pre-tape an intro. Okay. So we don't have to do a bullshit whatever.
All right.
But, yeah, this is Carl Smith. I'm here with Bill Kolb. Thanks for coming. Seriously.
Oh, you're welcome.
I appreciate you being here and bringing me vodka. I'm still in my fucking boot cast. My foot's broken, which means I'm off work, but I'm not supposed to walk around.
Just for the record, since you probably can't see the video if you're listening to this, his boot is not fucking.
It's fucked. I broke it the second day. Like the doctor was like, you can't put any weight on it. You've got to leave it up. Which is, as soon as I got out of there, I started walking around on it. Mm. And the back of it's broken already. He's like, if it's broken, you've got to come back and we've got to fix it. Fuck, I'm not going back there. It's like $35 just to see the fucking guy, so. Mm. But anyway. But yeah, I appreciate you coming over. I'm not supposed to drive, but I'm going to be driving this week. I mean, my wife's not going to buy food for me and shit. I've got to go out and take care of. I don't have anyone, so.
Well, I'll help with some of that, but, I can't, obviously. You're a grown man. You get to make your own decisions.
Yeah, you can't be my nursemaid, I understand.
Yeah.
So what were you working? You said you were working on some wood?
Yeah, I just, I joined this group that has a laser cutter. Okay. And I've been designing shapes on the computer, and then, and they're nothing fancy, just whatever whimsical thing I think of. And I cut a whole bunch of them out yesterday. I must have cut out probably 100 shapes. Wow. And they all fit together, kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. Uh-huh. And today I primed 15 of them, and they're going to all fit together to make a painting, and I'm just going to paint each shape a different color and then glue them down on a background. And I'm sort of trying to stay blind to it. Like, sure. I'm going to spray paint them I haven't memorized the composition, and right now all the pieces are loose. So I'm just going to spray each piece a different color without knowing how it fits back together. Wow. But it does fit in a specific pattern. And the backing already has the drawing of the pattern on it, but I'm not going to be looking at the backing while I'm spraying the pieces. And so I'll just make each one a color that goes with that particular piece as far as I'm concerned. Uh-huh. And then I'll just put them back in the pattern and see if I like it. And I don't know what I'll do if I don't like it. I guess I'll change the color of some of them or something.
Yeah. So what kind of armature do you put them on? Is it like a canvas or wood?
No, the backing is a piece of plywood, which has already been cut by the computer so that it's going to hide behind the pieces a little bit. So you can just glue them down and they'll hang over the edge a little bit. So you won't see the support, but you will see the design because it's all glued on top of it.
But it's still, you can transport it and hang it. And
yeah, it'll just be two. Basically, it's kind of like 2 layers of plywood, except one of them's cut up into a puzzle. Except it's not plywood. It's now they call it, I think, hardboard or something like that. We used to call it masonite. Same thing. Huh.
Cool. When did you start on those?
Physically, I started yesterday, but I've been thinking about it for a few weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. I don't know where we should start, but when did you come to Austin originally?
Well, I've been in Austin at least 4 times, and the first time I came here, I was still living with my folks, and we came here for at least 2 weeks, maybe up to 2 months. I can't remember how long. In 1957, my dad had a job here.
57?
1957, yep.
Son of a bitch. When were you born?
1944, so I was 13.
Awesome.
And
from where?
We lived in New Orleans. Well, I was born in Wisconsin, but I grew up in New Orleans, and so we drove over to Austin from New Orleans.
Wow. Cool.
And, I don't have any memories prior to living in New Orleans. I don't remember being born.
That's good.
I try.
Because it's all about the South. Just kidding. So were you doing art then when you came here, or?
No.
You didn't know you were an artist? You weren't drawing?
I knew I was interested in art because I grew up 2 blocks from a really good little college museum, and they would put on shows, and I'd go over there for most of I just wandered all over the campus, but on a pretty regular basis I'd drop into this little museum just to see if they had anything new, and pretty quickly I got so that I was real disappointed if it was crap and really excited if I saw something that I thought was really good. And the funny thing, it didn't dawn on me to be an artist. I just real early really cared about the stuff that they were putting on the walls.
Cared about quality.
Yeah, and real deep quality. I mean, I didn't care whether it was going to fall apart or anything like that. And the reason I say that is I just went to a show where the best thing you could say about it is that everything was very professionally done.
Yeah.
You know, boring as fuck.
Yeah.
But really professionally done. I mean, you couldn't fault it. And if you were like a interior decorator who didn't care about serious art, this would be the art to buy, because all of your clients would realize that you had good taste.
Wow.
You know?
But not really.
But that you didn't care about advancing in an exciting, energetic way, you know, to something that's fresh and new.
Yeah.
You know?
My instinct is to crap all over Austin and the artists here who do that, but as I've been getting older, I've been trying to be nicer to people. But there's a lot of shitty art here. But there's a lot of artists. There's a lot of good art.
There's
a ton of that.
The world. I mean, first of all, I don't want to be too self-congratulatory. For instance, I think there are better artists in Austin than I am, but I'm kind of on that. I'm pretty self-deprecating. It's sort of like I hope that I'm wrong.
Right.
But nevertheless. Like I really like the way Carry On paints. I really like the way he paints. Carry On.
I don't know.
Carrie Fitzgerald.
I don't know.
Oh, you got to learn about him.
Yeah.
I'll tell you about him in a minute. But and I really like the way you paint.
Oh, thanks.
And you can pay me later. But no, that was a sincere
You're
compliment.
my sponsor.
That was a sincere compliment.
$5 just changed hands under the mic.
I think we should actually mention that I have recently bought at least 17 of Carl's paintings.
Yeah.
And that's just because I knew that I would rocket to stardom if I ever could get onto his blog. And so that's the only reason I did it.
I do have a blog. And I have, God damn it. Yeah, I've got a lot of shit that I bail on. I just start new projects.
Oh, okay.
Until I get tired of them.
Oh, I thought that's what we were doing here.
That's what we're doing here. This is
right.
the third podcast.
Okay.
But yeah, thank you for buying art for me. You've been saving my ass
I
this year.
I don't do it as a favor. Well, I do it because I want to encourage you, because I think you're worth encouraging. But I have almost bought zero art in the last 50 years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm even a little surprised, but I did it because I wanted to do it. It wasn't, there wasn't, I don't know, they're good paintings, and your prices are more than reasonable, so.
Cool. So I guess the first place you would have seen them would have been Imagine Art, is that right?
Yes.
And it's kind of hard to describe what they do, but they're basically a non-profit based in Austin that helps people with disabilities make art. But that also extends to other artists. Like, you're not disabled, right?
Not physically.
Mine's on the inside. But was that the first place? That's where we first met, I guess, huh?
No, well, I don't know if we met or not, because the first time I really started paying attention to your paintings was you had a little painting at the show for East.
Oh, okay.
Little baby painting.
Last year, 2014, I guess.
Yes.
Okay.
And I saw that, and it was already sold, and it really pissed me off.
And it was $15?
Something like that. I thought it was like the best painting in there.
Thanks.
And the fact that it had the super low price on it just pissed me off that I didn't get there soon enough to snap it up.
Yeah, East Austin Studio Tour 2014. They do like. Have you ever participated in that free group show they do, where they just let anybody who wants to, of the hundreds of participants, they let them just do this giant group show for free?
Who is that?
So Big Medium does the East Austin Studio Tour.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they do that for West, but their main space is on the east side of town, where East Austin Studio Tour is geographically trapped. So that's the show you were seeing.
I saw the one down on...
it's on Springdale, Canopy, that space.
That's not where you were.
Oh, really?
No.
Oh, shit.
The show for the East thing was like down on 7th Street or something like that.
Okay.
It was an old Mexican restaurant that had been donated temporarily to big medium.
Cool.
So you didn't even see your show.
It's one. It was this is
one piece,
10 by 8 inches.
Yeah, I still, man,
out of hundreds.
If I could find out who bought it,
yeah,
and if they would sell it to me at a reasonable price, I'd still want it. I really like that painting.
Thanks. Yeah, those are like kind of the geometric ones.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've been working on those. Those have been my best seller, I guess. But I do the abstract ones too. I'm trying to think of where. So let's go back. So you said 4 times you've moved away from Austin and back.
Yeah. Okay. So the first time was a visit, and actually it's very memorable to me. Unfortunately, I can't tell you why, but a sort of wonderful, horrible thing happened to me in 1957 when I was 13 in Austin.
Okay.
But because it's horrible, I probably shouldn't have even brought it up.
Okay.
But anyway, I'm just saying, I think it's kind of interesting that something very memorable happened then.
Okay.
Then I got offered a job here in 1969 to teach art at UT.
Okay.
So I came back with my family, with my wife and 2 children.
Okay. So this is after you went to the Art Institute of Chicago. This is after that.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. If you want dates, I went to the Art Institute of Chicago from about 64 to 67. I already had credits before I got there.
Okay.
So I graduated in 3 years.
Oh.
And but it was not a big achievement. I'd already been to a year and a half of college, including a lot of art courses. So they transferred some of the credits in, and that allowed me to finish up there in 3 years.
And this was a BFA in painting?
Yes.
Okay.
BFA in painting.
Can I go to that for a second, because I'm really interested in when you, like, who you studied with, what you learned there. Was it good, bad, anything?
I don't think I made nearly the use of that place that I could have.
Yeah.
A lot of sections of my life I was a pretty miserable son of a bitch, and that was pretty true back then. But I did the best I could, I guess. I studied with a guy named Ray Yoshida. I don't think anybody's heard of him outside of the Art Institute. He was a pretty good teacher, but he let people like me goof off. He wasn't like a taskmaster.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really feel that I could have gotten a lot more done than I did.
Mm-hmm.
But I learned some stuff, and
art's pretty easy for you. That's a common thing for artists. They kind of fuck off in their art classes because it's kind of easy for them.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I was a real strange combination. Well, maybe not strange. Maybe a lot of people this way. But I really wanted to achieve something, and I really didn't have the self-discipline to be a dynamo like 8 or 10 hours a day.
Right.
And so I spent most of my time there wishing that I was doing what I wasn't doing.
Right.
But yeah.
It sounds like college.
Yeah.
To most people I know. So you went teaching right after you graduated?
No, I graduated from there in 67, and then I went to graduate school, got a master's in painting, and then I got hired straight from getting my master's to teach art at UT.
Wow.
And I taught mostly freshman design, although I did have some, I forget what they called it, but a student could come to you and say they'd like to design a course with you. And I was open to mostly only people that wanted to do painting courses.
Sure. Because
what I really wanted to teach was painting, but I had a few students on an individual basis that I was talking about painting with them.
So were you teaching like kind of traditional painting or abstract painting or what?
I was basically supporting them in whatever kind of art they wanted to make. And the guy that I remember the best, who became a very good friend of mine, was Bill Livingood. And he did some very nice abstract painting.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he's not around anymore.
Yeah. So UT, that's crazy. So you didn't like teaching?
I didn't like teaching, and I also got into electronic music at that time, and the department was pretty conservative, and
still is for avant-garde music.
Okay, but yeah. So anyway, when I started making loud electronic sounds in their museum, they didn't like that very much, and we just weren't a match.
And a better school would have just let you do it.
I hope so. I don't know.
Because I know that stuff happens at other.
You know. Also, UT had a long history of bringing a guy in, trying him out for a year or two, and then if he wasn't UT material, then they'd give him the boot. And they did that fairly often, you know. And I knew that once I was here. But I didn't really like teaching that much, and I hated faculty meetings.
Sure.
It's kind of stuff you don't think about. You're going to be put on committees, and you're going to have to think and do stuff that you have absolutely no interest in thinking about and doing.
It's a job,
Yeah, and
it's not art.
So
it's teaching.
Basically, I was probably better off without them, and they were probably better off without me.
Yeah. So what did you do after that?
So then I got stoned a lot.
This is Austin. 70s or?
Yeah, early 70s. Like, my teaching ended in 1971, in the spring of 71.
Okay.
So from summer 71 going forward, for a while, I was just kind of living hand to mouth and just...
Slacker.
Yeah, sort of a slacker, but I didn't really have the slacker style down. It's like, I think of a real slacker as someone who sort of enjoys the fact they're a slacker.
Right.
And I was kind of going, why aren't I doing more? Oh, and then I got involved with a band. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I started making weird electronic sounds with a band called Mariani.
Okay.
And actually a fairly famous guy came out of that band. His name was Eric Johnson. He's a really good guitar player.
Mm. Is he in Austin?
Yeah, he's based in Austin, and he's released some pretty good albums. And I don't know if he does this anymore, but he used to do a lot of studio work. And and it was pretty clear even back then that he was sort of destined to be successful, because when he was in our band, like here I was 25, but he was I think 15, and like he used to go jam with Johnny Winter and people like that.
Oh, wow.
So he definitely was coming along.
So when you say electronic music, you're talking like more rock, not music concrete, Stockhausen.
Well, I just did weird shit. I was not a musician. And so I just did weird sounds, and we would find places to fit it in to this rock band's music. Mm-hmm. And you can imagine, like, if you think of Pink Floyd or something, there's some times where they would just do this little part that was pretty abstract, right?
Yeah.
And maybe in some way tonal-wise related to the rest of it. And because I didn't really know how to fit in, it was... I didn't get that big of a part to do, and I think that you know, they wanted to sound professional, and in most of it I couldn't sound professional with them, so we just sort of fitted in the few places where it fit in.
So yeah, this is 2015, and I can't even imagine what Austin was like back then. The pictures I've seen, it's like dirt roads and just barely highways cutting through it.
Yeah, that's not no. It was certainly a lot less crowded. It had no tall buildings, like all of these skyscrapers. None of them. Yeah. The tallest building in town, if I'm not mistaken, was when I first got here, was the state capitol. So if you think of anything taller than the state capitol not existing yet, and there were still freight trains that would cross Congress Avenue between the river and the capitol.
Okay.
And so all the traffic would come to a halt as this slow freight train rambled by.
Wow.
So it was different, but on the other hand, it felt modern. I mean, people watched color TV and drove what were then modern cars.
Yeah.
You know?
Educated for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, Austin's always been kind of a haven.
That's one of the things when people look back at history that they don't realize is it's always been now.
Right.
It was now then. And believe me, someone 50 years from now, when they look back at 2015, will be going, oh man, I heard that they didn't even have like brain implants yet. and wow, that must have really been weird.
And it was always better then.
or whatever. I'm saying it's always now. And this is when you think about it, if you want to separate this now from the now of, I'm trying to pick a date, 1969, that's when I came here for my job. When are you going to pick? 5 minutes ago? 5 years ago? Like was the world terribly different 5 years ago?
Right.
No, it was now then.
Yeah. But it's better then because you kind of know. It's worse now because you don't have any, I mean, I don't know what it's going to fucking happen. It seems like it's mostly bad the longer you go on. The more bad stuff happens.
Nah, you're creating that.
That's true.
You can let go of a lot of that.
Yeah. That's another you can't live in the past either.
Right.
If you're going to be here now.
Yeah.
You've got to let go of the past, otherwise it'll ruin the now. It's a fucking conundrum. I'm 39 and I have no clue what I'm doing.
Well, we're getting awfully philosophical, but
yeah.
but it's interesting.
We're artists.
There you go. Yeah.
That's what we do.
We can say anything we goddamn well please.
That's true. So you said 69 job. Was that when you started working on computer stuff?
Well, 69 is when I came here to teach art.
At UT, okay.
And I taught for 2 years, and then I goofed around for a little while, and I'm kind of intentionally leaving out how I supported myself. And
Austin was kind of a...
Okay, I admit it, pimp. Big time pimp. I had the only beautifully polished, full-size pink Cadillac
in Austin
with fur hubcaps.
There would be a market, though, for the state government stuff, politicians. But, like, who else would get prostitutes in Austin? It's like a working class. There's not that kind of...
I don't know.
But you were doing it.
Yeah. The girls, that was not my problem. The girls just knew they better not come back without money.
Oh, right, because Bill Kolb.
That's right. Fucking brass knuckles. Oh, God. Somebody's going to kill me over this. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
It's just a joke.
Yeah, you've got to be a certain type of asshole. Well, New Orleans, God, you were there, so you've got you must have learned something in New Orleans. Bring that to Austin.
Yeah.
No, but Austin was, I have very fond fantasizations about the drugs and the fun and the music and the freedom and the cheapness, and Jim Franklin, Rocky Erickson, 13th Floor, all that stuff. And, even Willie Nelson, like that must have been fucking awesome. And contrasting with this horrible Texas culture, rednecks, jammed in one place. It's just...
Well, when I first, after a while, I had a ponytail.
Sure.
And I remember walking down the street and guys who didn't like hippies would throw things at you out of the car. Usually nothing very dangerous, but like a cup of Coke or something like that.
Probably spit cup.
Could be.
So you never got jumped, like beat up?
No.
Oh,
no.
good.
In fact, I don't think I really felt that was much of a danger. I think if you went out to some of the little towns, like I had some friends, some hippie-looking friends who, one guy, his uncle had a place near some small town, and when they would go, he went into town shopping one day. He was staying at his uncle's place, and somebody cut open the crotch of his pants, and he's not sure whether the guy was really trying to castrate him or whether it was just sort of a warning. But so he didn't hang around there much longer.
Jesus, no, I'd rather get the shit kicked out of me than
castrate.
Have a knife near my balls.
There you go. Yeah.
And ruin a perfectly good pair of pants. I'll heal up. My face will heal up, but the Levi's, I got to replace those now. Fuck. So let's see. Where are we going? Yeah, Austin. And so you've been here like as long as I've been alive, off and on. I was born in 75.
Yeah, sure. Make me feel old. What do I care?
Sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm just teasing. It's fine.
But I guess I'd like to get, where do I want to get? Because there's a lot of shit with you. You've taken a really interesting path. A lot of artists I know kind of fumble through their lives trying to figure out how to make money off their art. Yeah. And you've sort of taken this less smarter, very much smarter path.
Some of it was lucky, but around even as early as high school, I had a little bit of interest in digital math back when no one... I got lucky in that my high school math teacher adopted what at that time was called the new math, And one of the sections was like 1 week long, and it was how to do binary math. And I just thought it was fascinating. But
does
then,
that relate to logic gates, ones and zeros?
It does in an interesting way.
Okay.
I learned years later that anything that you could do in this mathematics, you could, this was much later that I learned it. I didn't learn it in high school. But you could design logic gates that would do the same math. That's not all that logic gates will do. They'll
do anything.
They'll basically do anything digital, right?
Yeah.
So like they can make little if-then-else decisions, like if the video camera sees a burglar, sound the alarm. It's just whatever.
Right.
You know, and so and we're all used to it now, but back then computers were something that happened in a big business far away, and people didn't really know how they worked. And when they showed up in cartoons, all the guys operating the computer were wearing white lab coats and stuff like that.
Right.
So we've come a long way in that area.
So you were on the ground floor.
So anyway, I needed a job after I got fired, and around, I don't remember for sure what year it was, but I'm going to guess probably 1973, I decided that goofing off wasn't really the way to go.
Yeah.
And so I went down to the state employment office, whatever they call that, and there was electronic tech. Well, I'd been doing electronic music, and so I knew a little bit. I knew how to solder, and I knew Ohm's law and a few other things. So I went and applied for the job, and I just went to the guys and I said, let me just tell you what I do know, and by subtraction you'll know what I don't know, because you guys are the engineers, I'm not.
Wow.
And I said, but the reason I'm applying for this job, sort of buttering them up, but it was also true, was I want to learn more. And they liked that.
Yeah.
And they decided that I knew enough to be their electronic tech. And it was actually kind of, I didn't realize quite what I was letting myself in for, because over the next year or two, I really had to scramble to understand what these guys were telling me. And I found out that I had a real kind of gut feel for digital electronics, not for the old analog electronics.
Okay.
Analog requires a lot more sophisticated math.
Okay.
And digital, if you can take to binary a little bit and take to Boolean logic, which is what we were talking about earlier, the digital logic part of it. Once you kind of get over that hurdle, which is not that giant of a hurdle, then it's pretty easy to get into it. And for me, it was very enjoyable. So after a couple of years of that, University of Texas announced we have a new master's degree program in the computer science department for people who are already working in technology. They already have a bachelor's degree, but it's in a non-technical field. And it was like it was written for me.
Wow.
So I came back to UT as a graduate student after having already been on the faculty. And I forget when I started that, but it was probably like 1977, I think. And by that time, I had already like designed some digital hardware, because I kept bugging these guys. I'd say, how does this work and how does that work? And I also sort of had a mentor outside of work who, in fact, he used to help me design digital circuits for electronic music. And one time I said, how much would you want to design this big new idea that I had for electronic music? And he said, I won't do it for you. I don't want to do it. But if you want it badly enough, you can be my student, and I'll teach you enough so that you can do it yourself. And I moved into his attic.
Wow.
And he would teach me a little bit at a time, and that worked. So so then I went back to UT around 77 and got out of UT around 1980 with a master's in computer science and what I call a minor in electrical engineering. And all I mean by that is I took every digital electrical engineering course that they would let me take, because what I really wanted to do was design hardware more than I wanted to write software. Turns out maybe I would have been a lot richer if I'd stayed with software, but I found the hardware more interesting.
Yeah. Huh.
This was kind of before the big billionaires of software had cropped up, so
yeah.
To me, computer hardware was computers, and computer software was these guys who didn't really know what was going on that made the software work. But
You were the WAS part of.
yeah, and I sort of got treated like the was in the end. It's like over
Those
time.
guys always do.
Well, the marketing guys,
Too bad.
the marketing guys, and the software guys definitely ended up on the top of the heap. But back when I started, no hardware engineer thought a software guy knew anything.
Sure.
You know, because from our point of view, they didn't.
Right.
Like they didn't know why the software worked. They just knew that if they followed the rules, it would work.
Yeah, they don't really need to. I mean,
No, they don't.
I-
Exactly. It's
yeah.
the same thing. It's like a race car doesn't really have to understand
Right.
a lot of what's going on down in the combustion chamber of an engine. you
Right.
know? But somebody has to, otherwise
Yeah.
you don't build a very good engine.
Yeah, and I like the segregation of duties part of that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how that relates to art, but
Yeah.
these are great processes to learn when you take it to art making. I feel like I studied accounting in college, so I feel like all that stuff helped me build a process
Yeah.
to art making, and I felt like I could break things up and get on top of it. And so that's kind of how you made your money, I guess. That's how you
So-
make money.
well,
you had a real job.
Yeah, I went out to Silicon Valley for 20 years and
Oh.
and I hated it.
Sure.
I didn't have, at least when I went out there, I didn't have any family out there. I didn't have any friends at first,
Oh.
and it seemed to me that I'll just go ahead and get in trouble. It seemed to me that California was full of BMW loving assholes, and I don't think that's true. I think there's actually plenty of wonderful people in
Sure.
California, just like there are everywhere. But I was so busy trying to make money and get out of there
Yeah.
that I didn't really get to know very many people very well.
Did you do any art there while you were doing that?
Yeah, I did. And in fact, when one of my companies got bought out and they told us, you need to find a position in the parent company because here's a list of positions that are no longer going to exist in the company that got bought out.
Mm-hmm.
I went over and looked, and there was one cherry job that I knew they wouldn't give me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I politicked like hell for that job. And the reason I did that was there was maybe one chance in 100 that they would give it to me.
Yeah.
But if they didn't, they were going to give me a year and a half salary to go away.
Wow.
And so I took a year and a half off and painted.
Wow.
So it was like a win-win situation. I mean, it was like a graphics creative lab at
Right.
Silicon Graphics, which was doing all the TV stuff for Hollywood at that time, like the Terminator, all the special effects for Terminator were done on their equipment. And I thought, well, hell, if I can have that job, and I've got the credentials for it, I've got a visual arts degree and a computer science degree, but I knew they wouldn't give it to me because it was like the plum job in the whole company, right?
Right.
And but that was okay with me because the year and a half salary looked even better.
Wow. That's where the money is when you start getting into entertainment. That's
Yeah.
what those guys are. You combine that with computers. Did you have plans to come back to Austin?
I definitely had it in mind, and then what happened was my older daughter moved back to Austin.
Okay.
What had happened, I got kind of didn't talk about that, but we got divorced around 1972.
Uh-huh.
And my ex-wife and my kids stayed in town for a few years, and then all of a sudden one day she told me that she was taking the kids and moving to Alaska.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really
Alaska.
stop that. Alaska, that's what I thought. Well, they only lasted a year in Alaska, but then instead of coming back here, they moved to Pittsfield, Massachusetts, which was also pretty far away.
Wow.
And I never got up to Alaska. I would have if they'd stayed there.
Yeah.
And then, but I did go out to Pittsfield and visit them. So anyway, my kids were gone, and they were growing up, and that didn't feel too good.
Yeah.
And then at some point in all this, I went out to California to make my fortune so I could paint whether I sold or not.
Mm-hmm. Was that the plan? Like from the whole thing? You have a bunch of money to paint?
I had it in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
And in fact, when I made $100,000, I talked to some of my fellow engineers, because by that time I was an engineer, and I said, you know, if I invest this well, maybe I could get 10% a year, which would be $10,000, and I could scrimp by on that. Back
Sure.
then I could have. And I said, "Do you think I ought to do that?" And they all looked at me in horror. It was
Yeah,
like, that's not enough money.
What are you, a
and
writer?
And they were right, because
For them,
I'd start out living kind of like pretty low on the hog, but as inflation came by over the years, it would just get worse and worse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Until finally I'd be forced to go get a job after I hadn't been working and stuff like that. So finally I just decided, okay, I'm going to bite the bullet and I'm going to stay in Silicon Valley until I've got enough money so that I'm pretty sure I'll die before I run out of money.
Wow.
And that's kind of what I did.
That's incredibly smart.
Well, I don't know if a lot of it was opportunistic. I mean, there was no guarantee when I went out there that things were going to go well. But you're right. I was really fired up about digital electronics right at the time when it was exploding.
Wow.
And so it was like, companies used to have fairly nice lunches inside the company because they didn't want you going out to lunch with your friends at another company.
Right.
Because sometimes people didn't come back.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we need what you do and we'll give you a 20% raise. And sometimes people just wouldn't even come back from lunch. So.
But those campuses are like jails.
Well, they're not jails.
They're not fun. They're not like... But, I mean, for me, it would be...
Yeah.
They're offices.
It's interesting.
So which companies were you working for?
The other thing was I worked for one company here before I went out there that used to be a startup, but had gone public before I joined them, okay? And I started finding out that some of the guys around me, just normal Joes, were millionaires.
Yeah.
And that really got my attention. And I said, well, does that happen? And they said, yeah, you got to find the right startup, and the place to go is Silicon Valley.
Wow.
So how do I do that? Well, you got to start making contacts and asking people. And then one day, I don't know who it was, but someone said to me, hey, there's a new startup in Santa Cruz, California, and they're looking for people, and we know some people that went there, and we think you might be interested.
Wow.
So I applied for a job out there, and I got it. And so it was just like, and they said, we need you right away. And I said, well, if you will if you will put all my stuff, including my car, on a moving van and store it for a month while I find a place to live, I'll come out in 2 days and start working for you guys. And so that's what we did. And I went out there and just jumped in with both feet, which is probably the way to do it, because I was, normally I would have had a lot of trepidation, but there wasn't really time to be very scared because I told them I'd be on the job in 2 days.
Wow.
So I went out there and
it's incredibly brave.
Well, it was just fast. It's kind of like jumping in the deep end and holding your nose or something.
Yeah.
And it turned out, actually, that company did not make me any money. I was there a year and I realized there was a major flaw in their technology. And so I started shopping around. But the next company that I jumped to, which again, it's all, they say networking. I'm not a really good networker, like really super duper networkers are.
Right.
But you just start asking your friends, have you heard of anything, right?
Yeah.
And one day a friend came to me and he said, hey, a friend of mine just joined Amiga, which is this little bitty startup, and he says they've got some really good technology, and they've got some guys that have succeeded before in other companies, and there's a chance that these guys will pay off. And sure enough, I went there and worked my ass off for I can't remember how many years, maybe 3 or 4 years, something like that. And I mean like you get up in the morning, you drive to work, you work until you cannot work anymore, you drive home, you go to bed, you get up, you go back to work, and you do it again. And once in a while you take Sunday off. So, wow. But we just did that, and there were guys who were like sleeping on the couch in the waiting room of the company and stuff like that. But that company finally got their technology out there and impressed enough people that Commodore Computer, which is now defunct, bought Amiga, which is the company I was with, and that cashed us out.
Wow!
It's like within 6 months we had money instead of stock.
Wow!
And I forget how much I made on that. Probably like 2 years' salary, something like that. But if you get 2 years' salary and you're not living high off the hog, and you put it in the stock market, that happens a few times, and all of a sudden you've got a real nest egg.
Sure. Wow, that's great. So did you immediately come back to Austin after that?
Well, no, I was, like I say, I was out there 20 years.
Yeah.
And I think I like worked 6 or 7 startups.
Okay.
And some of them were disasters, but I got better and better at seeing this thing is totally falling apart. It's time to move on.
Wow.
And I got a second payoff with MIPS computers.
Okay.
And MIPS made a big effect on personal computing, even though they are not in your personal computer. What happened was their technology was so good that they kind of forced Intel to pump new billions into research to make sure that they wouldn't be behind us for very long. Mm-hmm. And of course we were a startup, so we didn't have billions to pump into it.
Yeah.
But the result was, it used to be that you measured the clock speed of computers in millions of cycles per second. Mm-hmm. And Intel and then their competitors of Intel suddenly had to push the clock up to billions of clock ticks per second, which is like 1,000 times faster.
Yeah.
And that's what we've got today, is we still have all these computers that they're running in the gigahertz rather than the megahertz, and that's when software kind of really was able to take over. It was like now the computers were fast enough that you didn't even need super duper programmers to make things run at a decent speed, because the underlying hardware was 1,000 times faster.
Wow. Crazy.
I know, it is crazy.
So let's get to painting a little bit.
Yeah, let's get to art.
So I'm starting to see more of, you've got 3 or 4 different kind of styles that I'm familiar with, and one of them has a lot to do with kind of thick, stringy, almost like soldering or circuits, where they're overlayered.
Oh yeah.
And then I guess that's almost with fabric paint, where you're drawing these thick lines, but they keep overlapping, and some of your work almost goes into sculptures, like giant chunks of, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
So what are
those made out of? Like that photo I sent you today? Did you see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, explain that.
Okay. Well,
but those are paintings too, right?
Well, they've got paint in them.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to give away all my secrets, not that they're that valuable. But those paintings, the reason that they're so three-dimensional is at first I would build the surface up just in whatever seemed like a good idea at the time. Sometimes it would be thin plywood built into structures on a plywood thing, but then the paint itself, I would mix ground up paper into gel, and it made this real textury goo. Now I'm not sure, what worries me about those, I'm not sure in the long run whether the paper will ever release anything that might change the color of the paint, but those paintings have been around for a while, and so far they have not discolored, so I think the odds are good that
there's a lot of solidity. And that stuff dries really well in like oil, which doesn't really dry.
Yeah.
So are you adding anything else? I know gel medium is sort of like an acrylic. Are you adding any thinner or anything?
No.
So it's just solid.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm coloring it.
Yeah.
So I'm putting acrylic paint into the gel to color it.
Okay.
And I'm putting the paper in there to give it that really rough texture.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much it. And some of those paintings are like 8 inches thick.
Wow. So how heavy?
Heavy. I didn't weigh them, but heavy.
50 pounds or something.
Oh, more than that.
Really?
Yeah, because they're like 6 feet 8 inches tall or something like that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they're big.
Yeah. Crazy. So.
And then I switched over to the dripping dots thing, and I did that. I'm still doing that, I guess.
Yeah.
I've been doing that a long time.
Those are probably my favorite, the dots.
Oh yeah.
But those are bigger, right? 11 feet, 10 feet.
Yeah. Well, some of them are even like 12 feet tall.
Yeah.
And I like the taller they are, the better, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, my studio is 14.5 feet tall, and I haven't done a 14-foot painting yet, but I'm sure I will.
With the dots, or
yeah.
So you have a studio on the east side. What's the square footage of your workspace?
I forget exactly, but it's on the. Oh no, I know. It's I want to say it's either 1,280 square feet or 1,240. I forget what it is. It's some. The walls are made out of 4-foot sections because they're vertical plywood.
Okay.
I mean, you can't see the plywood because it's got sheetrock over it, but it was designed so that we didn't have to cut any of the plywood, that it all just fit together.
Okay.
And so it's some multiple of 4 feet each way, and I think it's 32 by 40.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's 1280, I think. 32 by 40, I believe, is 1280.
Sounds good. And so, but there's a top space too that's just as big?
Yeah,
Okay.
the apartment above it is the exact same.
And you had that made specifically, like, to live in and make paintings.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is really unique in Austin.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone with that, that type of space. I don't know anyone working on that scale.
Yeah.
And I don't know anyone really working at that level of abstraction, which is highly non-objective, right? I mean,
Yeah. In fact, if I see things creeping in, I usually try to get rid of them. It's just, I don't want the distraction. In fact, a friend of mine knows that, and he knows that I get annoyed by people reading. I mean, I don't mind if they read it into it. I just don't want to start seeing what they're seeing.
Sure.
So I don't especially like people pointing out to me, oh, that looks like a dog peeing on a hydrant or something like that.
Yeah.
Because it seems to me, and people used to say, well, what good is it? I mean, people are more sophisticated now, but people would say, well, what good is it? It's not a picture of anything. And the way I think about it is, if we're going to allow Beethoven to make sounds without them sounding like tweeting birds and barking dogs and honking horns and screaming children and stuff like that, then why can't we allow our painters the same freedom to compose any damn way they want to? In other words, why does it have to look like a dog in a painting, but it doesn't have to sound like a dog in a concerto?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Beethoven's works often didn't have titles, numbers.
Yeah, or even if they did have a title, it didn't. It used
Someone
to be,
else,
this is less true now than it used to be.
Yeah.
Or maybe people just don't speak up as much about. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of people that don't like non-objective painting, and that's fine with me. There's lots of art that I don't like.
Yeah.
But it used to be that people really couldn't believe that you were serious making non-objective painting, and now everybody's more sophisticated.
Yeah.
Or most people are.
Well, I immediately thought of Jackson Pollock when you said wiping out images, because he was pretty famous for that.
Yeah.
Anytime any of his, But what's funny is he went back to figuration after years of making those drip paintings.
Yeah.
He went back to this hell of stuff that he seemed really lost. But
I think he lost his confidence. I don't know if you know this. You probably do, but he did his best work during about 3 years when his wife got him to quit drinking.
Yep. Yeah.
And then there was like one day. Well, two things happened. Was his psychiatrist died, who had been a big factor in him being able to give up drinking, and at about the same time he made that movie with what's his name?
Yeah.
And that was very traumatic for him, because the guy kept saying, now go back and do that same part of the painting again, and he felt like that was fake.
Sure.
And so, and he didn't want to be a fake. And so, like, I guess it's even written down that night he screams at the guy.
The night the movie was finished.
You're the fake. I'm not the fake.
Yeah.
But then he gets up and starts drinking, and he never quit drinking again.
Yeah.
I mean, and his paintings went to hell.
Yeah, and those drip paintings were only like 2 or 3 years that he was doing those.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. And he died, a couple of years after.
Yeah. I think his best work was like 49 to 53.
Okay.
Then I believe it was in 53 that he started drinking again.
Uh-huh.
And then he died in 56. So he went through 3 years of not knowing quite what to do with himself. And
he probably felt, there's a lot of stuff going on with him and Lee, Ruth Kligman. It's very, very, very sad.
Yeah.
But definitely a big influence on your art, my life. I mean, when's the first time you discovered his art?
I think I was 18. I remember I had just hitchhiked back to New Orleans after graduating from high school.
Uh-huh.
And I'd never heard of Jackson Pollock, and I was really interested in modern art. And I just stumbled across this book on his work, and I just felt like, well, God, this explains everything. Mm-hmm. This is what all those other guys are trying to do, and they knew about him, but I didn't know about it. I felt like I had been on the outer edges of like a hurricane or something,
Sure.
and I didn't know that there was an eye at the center of the hurricane until I just stumbled across his work. And then I'm sure a lot of people won't like this, but my interpretation of abstract expressionism is there was Jackson Pollock and all of his followers.
Okay.
That he was gigantic, and they wanted to be giant too, and I don't blame them, you know. And sometimes in a movement, 2 or 3 artists will be giants. But I personally think that Pollock was head and shoulders above the rest of them, even de Kooning.
Yeah, he embraced, and we've talked about this before, but he embraced this idea that was totally new in art, that creation, the act of creation is central to the content of the paintings, and he did that in a way that no one else did.
Yeah.
And yeah, if that's what you're talking about, what's that? Pause. Sorry. Okay. Oh, so I had to pee.
Yeah.
You had to pee.
Yeah, actually, and I just want to tell the listening public that I wish I had said, I'll be right back, I got to take a leak, but instead I gave hand signals, and so we turned off the tape recorder.
Confusing hand signals. Kill yourself, cut your head off. And it's fucking raining outside. You have to drive home.
It's no problem.
Yeah, you're gonna be alright?
Yeah. I used to drink, I just haven't done much lately.
Me either. Yeah, I haven't drunk in like 3 weeks, but man.
Maybe if it's okay with you when we're done with this, I'll sit around for 15 minutes and let the alcohol settle down a little bit. But
yeah. Well, speaking of fucking alcohol, this fucking JP Jackson was like one of the biggest.
Yeah.
All those dudes were like, but they were binge drinkers.
Yeah.
Like weeks of drinking.
Yeah.
Like,
And I think they certainly were. A lot of them were very heavy drinkers. I met Kadish, who was Jackson Pollock's high school buddy who came out to New York with him.
Okay.
Reuben Kadish. I didn't know him well. And at that time that I met him, I didn't know that he'd been such close personal friends with Pollock. And I wish I had known, although I'm sure he was tired of people asking him about Pollock.
Yeah.
So maybe it's better that I didn't ask him anything.
Yeah.
But actually, I knew his son and his daughter-in-law, and I actually slept at his house one night. A bunch of us were out there, just kind of like camping out at their farmhouse.
So you've seen his studio?
Did not see his studio. He didn't invite anybody to go out and see his studio.
Because it's open now. I haven't been out there, but it's Hampton, right? East Hampton.
Oh, you're talking about Pollock.
Yeah.
I'm talking about Reuben
Kadish.
Kadish.
Okay,
yeah.
sorry. God, none of those guys were that I know about.
As far as I know,
that was a different time.
Yeah.
Those were seriously hard times for those guys, but they were also, just come out of a war. They were reinventing, just the whole fucking thing that art could be. Those guys really changed it all, and it really came out of America too.
It did.
It could only have happened here, but it affected everything. Picasso, even at the end of it, in his 80s, was making almost Pollock-y, figure-ish type of things.
Yeah, and poor Picasso. I mean, I loved a lot of Picasso's work, and I used to look at it all the time.
Yeah.
And here he is now. He's old, and he's used to being. He was the avant-garde in France for I don't know how many, 40
decades,
years maybe?
Yeah.
Decade after decade.
Yeah.
And suddenly, there's this new hot kid on the block.
Yeah.
And I think that must have been kind of a disappointment for him. But what can you do? I mean, the same thing happened to Pollock, right? Like right at the end, the very guy who had been championing starts saying, "Oh, we got some new guys to look at here."
Yeah.
And that made Pollock feel like shit. So.
Well,
just remember that when you're famous, Carl, that it's fleeting.
It's fleeting.
I'll remember. And that get your satisfaction out of doing the work, not out of all the groupies and all that stuff.
The groupies, yeah. Holy shit! I wish. I don't know any. Oh man, yeah. And then after that, it's just fucking pop art, which is like totally depressing to me.
Is it?
Compared to the excitement and the raw energy and the vigor and the fucking go for itness of that movement.
I sort of think of it like intertwining parts of DNA. Mm-hmm. It's like pure abstraction is so different from pop art, but to me, you get to see each of them better by the other also existing alongside of it. Yeah. That probably has nothing to do with DNA, but drink enough vodka and you start thinking you know stuff.
I kind of see what you mean, and art really, really exists in contrast, high contrast. So there's, extremes before and after each other all the time, but I really see a shift in humanity, and even you get into Reagan, it just seems to just keep going down, and I think humanistic and love and skill and drawing and all that shit, I mean, there's still a part of art that stuff exists in, but...
Well, since you're young and I'm old,
okay,
I'm going to tell you a weird thing.
All right.
But seeing that not everything goes the way I would like it to in the world actually makes it easier for me to face my death.
Okay.
It's kind of like, oh, well, it was fucked up during World War II and they gassed all those people and that was horrible. And then I thought the world was going to be wonderful forever. But now that I'm facing the fact that I'm mortal and won't be here forever, maybe I'm kind of happy that the world has always been fucked up and always will be fucked up. It makes it easier to leave it.
Yeah. I hear you. But I don't want to rush it.
No, don't
want to rush into it.
No, don't rush it. That's something else.
It's coming.
I know I've told you before that I'm kind of chronically depressed, except that I've got good meds, right?
Yeah.
So, where was I going with that? Oh, I used to be a little bit suicidal.
Okay.
Including one really crappy attempt that went nowhere. Oh. But now I'm not. And part of it is, fuck, I'm 70 years old. Why bother being suicidal? That's going to take care of itself,
Yeah.
So, and I had a friend, this guy was wonderful, but he was a lot older than me. He was like, I think in his early 90s, and he ran for office here in Texas, and I can't remember which office, but he publicly ran for office, and his campaign slogan was, "Who needs term limits? I'm 92." I thought that was like one of the funniest things I'd ever heard.
Okay.
He was that was Sid Smith, by the way, and Sid Smith was a great guy.
Huh. So we kind of ran across. Do you consider yourself like an abstract expressionist, or?
No, but I consider myself as very beholden to that tradition.
Okay.
I mean, I feel very privileged that I got to look at Jackson Pollock, and I mean, it would be my dream to ever do some paintings that were sort of worthy of that tradition. So I guess I'm a post-abstract expressionist, but which is sort of, I think that's what I would call you too.
Yeah, that's kind of what I strive for. I would love to sort of be, and I'm not really, I flirt with non-objectivity all the time, and it just fucking tanks. It's horrible. So I usually go back to some sort of landscape or something, which isn't that exciting, but it takes a lot.
Well, I got to tell you that not everybody. Sometimes when you call something a landscape, and I go, well, let him call it that if that's what he wants to. But as far as I'm concerned, it's a painting.
Yeah. But I have some sort of connection with drawing. Like in school, you're taught to draw what you see, and just that whole tradition of painting too, of building an image. That to get past, you have to work out of. And it takes, sometimes it takes 20 years or whatever, so. And, it's a lot of work. But I love that. I love the part of it, the working part. But I want to, we're gonna wrap up quick.
We were going to mention my website, which is just facebook.com/artbybill. And Art by Bill is all one word with no spaces.
That's awesome. And we're going to try to put up a YouTube. You were in LA doing art?
I did a show in LA, and the main part of the show was an honest-to-God one-person roller coaster that one person at a time could ride on. And I had to go down and measure the gallery to make sure that the roller coaster was the right size to fit in the gallery. And furthermore, the person who said they would give me a show did it based on photographs of my paintings, and I knew that she would chicken out because some other people had already chickened out. I was pretty sure she'd chicken out if I told her I was going to build a roller coaster in her gallery.
Mm-hmm.
So I just showed up with a truckload of roller coaster parts, and I got there on a Friday, and she let me in, and then she came back on Monday, and there was a roller coaster in her gallery. And it was too late for her to say no, and so...
And you've got footage of this. What year was this?
I don't know exactly, but I want to say 1992. It was around there. Might have been 91, might have been 93.
Wow. Yeah, and you've got these big paintings you're doing now. I would love. I mean, we don't really. I mean, I do some shows, but have you shown in Austin much?
I haven't shown the big paintings, no.
But you've done other.
Well, mostly I've shown what you've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Although I don't know if you probably saw the latest stuff down at Imagine Art. I don't know.
I haven't been there recently.
Well, it's gone now, so too late. Yeah. That's okay. It's nothing that you haven't seen. You've seen the same paintings at my house.
Yeah. A lot of them are mixed media, right? Like with not jewelry, but like rocks and marbles.
I put, and you know those little sort of half marbles that people put in the bottom of their fish tanks?
Yeah.
I've been putting those in a lot.
Cool.
And then also some acrylic, not acrylic like painting acrylic, but the other kind, acrylic plastic.
Yeah.
They make a lot of fake jewels out of that stuff, and I've stuck some of those in.
Okay. So do you consider those paintings or mixed media?
Yeah,
or?
well, I don't even think about it. I just want them to look good. I mean, to me, it's a way of jazzing up a painting, and if it looks good, I keep it, and when it doesn't look good, I get rid of it and try something else.
Cool. Well, I can't think of anything else. Is there anything else you want to add?
I can't think of anything right now, but thanks. This has been fun.
Thanks for doing it. I should probably thank my wife or something, but I hope we get to keep painting.
Oh, I got one more thing to say. I'll be right back. I got to take a leak.
And with that, we're out. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. Thanks, Carl.